Almost forgot! Ugh. Here, for good luck!
What is it, Rally?
Turbo Booster!
Wasn't this your father's card?
I want you to take it. Like my dad always says, you never know when you might need a boost.
I want to talk about my favorite character from card games on motorcycles.
Card games on motorcycles.
Card games on motorcycles!
You are the first reviewer to ever make that joke.
I am?
But first, let's clarify what I mean when I say a deck can illustrate a character. Of course, the cards character used in the Yu-Gi-Oh anime almost always reflect the duelists on an aesthetic level. Weevil Underwood uses bugs because he's a sneaky little creep. This buff lady uses Amazons because girl power. And Pegasus uses tunes because he's a grown man with taste. But today I want to go beyond aesthetics and talk about how the duelists are represented thematically through the mechanics of the card game itself. In the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, the most basic conflict that arises from two duelists and how they interact within the mechanics of the card game is one guy mostly cares about attack points, and the other guy is an underdog who can use strategy and tricks to pull off a skillful victory.
Draw your last pathetic card so I can end this, Yugi.
My grandpa's deck has no pathetic cards, Kaiba.
In the original series, Yugi pulled this off decently well. Look no further than how his Dark Magician would lose to Kaiba's Blue Eyes White Dragon in a straight fight, but the Dark Magician and Yugi in general just has more support cards that can make him more versatile. This dynamic in their rivalry even carries over to their Egyptian god cards. Kaiba's Obelisk is consistently powerful, whereas Yugi's Scyther only has the potential to grow more powerful if used correctly. I really appreciate how consistent they kept this between the two characters. However, they do fumble a bit with Yugi's deck overall. While Yugi is the guy who used a Kuribo, he's also the guy who used powerhouses like Exodia, Buster Blader, and the original Beatstick, Summoned Skull. In fact, Yugi's whole deck is pretty incoherent. Most of the monsters don't work well together in a practical sense, and there's no unifying aesthetic tying them together. And it certainly doesn't help that nearly every iconic monster in his deck took on a life and legacy of their own over time, many becoming deck archetypes onto themselves. But for a first try, it's not bad, especially considering how Yugi in the show in general is literally a conduit to advertise hip new playing cards. Not to mention the franchise was in its early days. I doubt the showrunners knew what kind of monster the Yu-Gi-Oh card game would evolve into. But when it comes to the original series, the duelist whose deck interests me the most is this goofball. Joey Wheeler is not a good duelist, at least not at first. He's the newbie who's still learning the difference between the battle step and the damage step. But all the most memorable cards he uses in the early parts of the anime have a commonality: luck. Joey doesn't have the smarts, but he has the balls. So he uses that lack of fear to use riskier strategies and cards like Time Wizard that other duelists would be afraid to use. And the progression of his deck also shows how he grows out of relying solely on luck. Throughout Battle City, Joey uses his head a little more and obtains new cards like Jinzo, which he uses to create a more solid foundation for his deck. These aren't cards he got from Yugi or cards Yugi taught him how to use. They represent his experiences and how he's improved on his own. You can find a lot of examples of what I'm talking about throughout every part of the anime, like more so than I could give credit to in a single video. And they tend to be pretty good and I like them. But most of them are nothing compared to my favorite example in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. So let's talk about the guy in the title and thumbnail, Yusei Fudo. On aesthetic level, Yusei's deck is a perfect fit. He literally uses the junk deck because he's poor. He lives in a garbage dump called the Satellite, and poor people aren't even allowed to have cards. But Yusei and everyone else from Satellite managed to create decks of their own by scrounging up cards other people threw away.
Your deck's made up of cards others threw away, and no matter how you patch it up, trash is still trash. There's not a card in your deck that can save you now.
He's right, but I've never relied on just one card before, and I don't plan on starting now.
When it comes to underdog protagonists who use weaker monsters in smart ways, Yusei pulls this off better than any other protagonist, I feel. See, many of Yusei's junk monsters and cards complement level 2 and lower monsters. And this works so well diegetically, because Yusei found these cards in a trash heap. Monsters like Sonic Chick and Speed Warrior might have neat effects, but their low stats leave a lot to be desired. It's not hard to imagine some duelists not wanting to use these monsters. or junk monsters who are only able to combo with these weaker monsters. As any fan worth their salt knows, the card game's IRL meta begins with beatdown decks, where level 4 and higher monsters with the best stats are the most valuable.
In your entire deck, there's not a single card that can stand up to a Blue Eyes White Dragon.
But as the game progressed, this strategy became too simple, and now a good card needs to combo with as many cards in your deck as possible. Like how Junk Synchron can be used to special summon level 2 or lower monsters from the graveyard. And this ability usually leads into Yusei summoning one of my favorite monsters, Junk Warrior. When Junk Warrior is summoned, it can add up the attack points of all other level 2 or lower monsters on the field and add it to its own power. It's literally a monster that's supported by weaker, maybe even worthless cards, and uses that support to fight head to head with monsters that would otherwise be stronger than it. Because of this ability, I feel Junk Warrior represents Yusei's character better than any other card he has. He's supported and built by the friends around him. Even if other people are bigger, stronger, more influential, and not dirt poor, these are the people who love him. And what help they can offer him is far from worthless.
I'm not worried anymore. After all, my real friends are right here.
Whoa, I'm not your friend. I just came here to stop the Dark Sinus.
Sorry, Jack, but like it or not, we have to be friends.
The fact that Yusei's deck revolves around low-level monsters specifically is what allows this theming to remain strong and consistent. Another great example is Junk Destroyer. Junk Destroyer is a monster who can instantly destroy cards equal to the number of non-tuners used to summon it. So using 4 level 2 monsters is better than using 2 level 4 monsters. It's a case where using weaker monsters is just downright beneficial for its cause. And one of my favorite plays is when Yusei sacrifices level 8 Powerhouse to special summon a handful of low level monsters, and pulls off some shenanigans with them. It's fun. It's also notable that the final villain has a deck filled with almost nothing but level 10 monsters, the complete opposite of Yusei's deck. There is one noteworthy card that sticks out in Yusei's deck, however. It doesn't fit with the junk theme at all, but that contrast is used meaningfully. Initially, it represented Yusei and his friends' wish to leave the satellite. Hope is an important word to Yusei, and he believes even a false hope is a necessity to help you get through the toughest of times. And that hope is the only thing that can inspire true change. True to its name, Stardust Dragon is a shining star that radiates hope. Almost a literal diamond in the rough, just like Yusei himself. But it later comes to represent Jack's betrayal. Jack was the type who was willing to sacrifice his friends to get ahead. He'd throw away his bonds the same way other duelists would throw away weak monsters. And I love the dynamic Stardust Dragon has with Red Dragon Archfiend and Black Rose Dragon respectively. Red Dragon Archfiend is a monster with higher attack points than Stardust Dragon, with an aggressive ability to match. Upon attacking, it can instantly destroy all defense position monsters and even its own allies who don't attack the same turn it does. This self-centered offensive ability is a perfect match for Jack's ego and self-centered attitude.
Rubbish! I'll do what I want and you'll like it because you're lucky to have me!
But if it uses that ability, it'll be at the mercy of Stardust Dragon's ability to negate and destroy cards that try to destroy others. But in a straight-up fight, Archfiend still has the upper hand in attack points, rightfully leaving Yusei as an underdog. On the other hand, Akiza, or Aki if you're a helpless weeb, the holder of Black Rose Dragon, is an unhinged traumatized sadist. Her trauma, paired with her literal cult conditioning, has left her a mess of a person to say the least. She lashes out against anyone who tries to get close, and she enjoys hurting others the same way she was hurt by isolation and ridicule. This abrasiveness is reflected in 2 of her Black Rose Dragon's abilities. The first is to weaken other monsters, because making others helpless before destroying them is what a sadist would do. And the second is to instantly self-destruct upon being summoned. Stardust can negate that second ability with its own, because Yusei wants to pacify her outlashes and stop Akiza's self-destructive tendencies. He wants her to stop harming herself, and let her know that letting people in will do her more good than it can harm. They even frame Stardust's ability in this duel as a hug, which is just sweet.
I ship it.
It's pretty amazing how perfectly these dragons and their abilities can represent their duelists, and the relationship between them all while staying within the mechanics of the Yu-Gi-Oh card game. And that's why card games on motorcycles is the best one. Thank you all for joining me today. I'm a bit behind on Yu-Gi-Oh, so I'm not sure if Yusei's deck would remain as my favorite in this sense, but his junk deck is certainly the strongest example I found in my experience with the franchise. Again, thank you all for watching. Like the video if you thought it was cool, subscribe if you want to see more, leave a comment about the Yu-Gi-Oh character who you think had a really cool deck that complemented them really well. Check out my side channel where I goof off and do silly things, and have a beautiful day.